Go live with Tom Hiddleston ad. Look at this. We've raised £3,000.
Hi.
Hiya. Look, that's you going up the ladder.
Yes.
This is
Lovely.
us doing
Yeah.
the Siege of Coriolanus with 14 chairs and a ladder and some amazing acting. Tom, tell us what happened when you went up that ladder.
So during this scene, we're watching Alfie Enoch give an extraordinary monologue, thinking that Marcius is dead. I've gone up a ladder. The Donmar is a very small theatre. It used to be a banana ripening warehouse. I would imagine all of the space that they used to change the warehouse from banana ripening to being a theatrical space is playing space. So I climb up this ladder and I climb into the lighting rig. And then I crawl along the lighting rig on my hands and knees. And then down 2 fire escape ladders. And then I stand in a paddling pool I stand like a mannequin while my armor is taken off by 4 amazing crew. And then I get doused in blood, and then here I am.
Are you here? I was slightly worried that I made this entrance look like an 80s pop video. What you're about, and here's Peter DeJozy vamping brilliantly while you're getting that. I mean, vamping, he's speaking Shakespeare, but I was talking to Rob Hasty earlier, who is now the artist. Oh, here you are. Look at that. Should have put Belinda Carlisle on, really.
I would have started.
It looked great. It looked great. Honestly, it did look great. Sorry. Look at
what's interesting in remembering it is it was such backstage. It was such a mad journey because I had to unclip myself from a harness for health and safety.
Because you clipped on to climb up the ladder, right?
On to climb up, and it wasn't like I was being pulled up, but in case I ever slipped and fell, the harness would have caught me. Would have been a very strange scene. And then so I had to unclip myself from the harness and then to then scamper down these 2 fire escape ladders and literally stand in a paddling pool while my armor was taken off and the buckles were taken off, and then doused in blood. And sometimes
what that story is that he goes alone into Coriolanus. They lock the gates on him. Everyone thinks he's dead, and you need to emerge as if you were single-handedly taking the city of Coriolanus. So we need to create a moment where we believe that you'd gone into the city, forced the gates open, and the Roman army can now go in and sack it. So
bonkers.
It's like, I mean, insane. And also, you know, I don't know if it's helpful or not to have to do all that crazy stuff in order to then get back in again to make you feel like you have just sacked the city of Coriolanus. But
It definitely isn't. It's definitely very intense. It felt very
okay.
intense.
Now look, here's this fight. Now this fight probably had more rehearsal than anything else because it's so famous, so long, and so technical, and such a piece of choreography. You were both amazing in this. Erin was saying before, she just popped on before you came on, our stage manager, that it was a really important thing that you ran this every day, and her big recollection really is, you know, making this safe. She also mentioned that the sword snapped and flew off, not in this
yes. Yeah.
moment that you'll see here, but we had some snappy swords.
Before every performance, we rehearsed this fight, and we basically had 3 or 4 runs at it, and the first one was always walking through the moves, and then the second one was at 40%, the third one was at 80%, and sometimes we did a 4th one at sort of 90%. So just to make sure that the muscle memory was absolutely up to date, almost like you do a kind of mental software update every single day to make sure that you know
Amazing.
where the other person's going to be.
Oh, it's gone hand to hand. I mean, I think that's like a really important thing to say about this, which is when you do something like this on film or on telly, not on the stage as it is here, you do it in little bits. Yes. Like, okay, there's some famous fight scenes where you go, that's handheld, and, you know, Paul Greengrass followed, like, huge, but this is an unbelievably long piece of choreography to learn.
Well, it is choreography. It's like a kind of a dance or anything that's choreographed, really. And it takes. You have to trust each other. And Hadley and I, we worked on this for 3 months.
Yeah.
Before we started,
with the amazing Richard Ryan, fight choreographer,
who is an amazing fight choreographer. And
yeah, he came and did Mary Queen of Scots actually when I did my first movie. He did the fights on that. He was brilliant.
And the extra challenge of doing it in a theatre that's on 3 sides,
yeah,
like a courtyard or a kind of a horseshoe with edges, and that changes your relationship to angles as well, because you can't if you can't fake the distance.
Yeah.
And actually, Hadley and I had to be incredibly close to each other and trust that the other person knew that the next blow was coming and to get out of the way. And that's about rehearsal, that's about practice, that's about eye contact. In fact, it's always about eye contact. If you keep looking at each other, you'll always be able to respond quickly.
Yeah, there's kind of an okay, isn't there? There's like an okay before I do. It happens at lightning speed, but you check before you go.
Yeah. But my memory of it is it creates an extraordinary, it's sort of an extraordinary, unique, unmanufacturable intensity of alertness and focus and attention. Every single
and
night. And
intimacy, actually, with someone that you're going to be intimate with later in the play.
I was partially relieved when it was over. Like a part of me went, okay, that's the fight done, and I have neither Hadley nor I are injured.
Yeah.
And it was a good one,
Yeah.
At one point, he throws me over his shoulder, and it's I was young once.
Oh, stop it! I mean, so that Hadley and I have done a lot of plays together. So just before this, we'd worked together for the first time. He played Garry Kasparov in a brilliant play about Kasparov losing to Deep Blue. And we did this show together, but Hadley is very famous for being one of the greatest singers in the whole of theatre.
Yeah.
And we did a musical together at the drama called City of Angels, which we were actually about 5 days from opening before we locked down. So the set, the costumes, the wigs, the props are all sat in the Garrick Theatre. But Hadley has to, as part of the choreography at the start of that, a bit like this, do a really big jump.
Right.
And there is something really interesting about coming back to something 5 or 6 years later and having to perform a jump when you were a bit younger. I mean, he obviously nailed it, but we did have many laughs about time past. Yeah. My YouTube is buffering because my internet's not being. Where are we at, Tom? Because I've slightly.
So Cominius, a great Roman general played by Peter de Jersey, has just given Marcius his new name, Caius Marcius Coriolanus. He sacked the city of Coriolis on his own, and he now has a name which sits in addition to his given name.
Yeah.
And he's being feted and celebrated in a way that makes him uncomfortable. And it's a strange presentation. It's a remarkable presentation of his immediate humility, which I think is real in the face of having done something very brave. Yeah. Which is that he doesn't want gifts or reward. He doesn't take any satisfaction or fulfillment in reward for his deeds.
Yeah.
He refuses.
So a question for you, because the reason that his mother is so obsessed with him getting all these wounds and being this perfect soldier and doing what he's just done, which is an amazing act of famous courage, is so he can progress politically. And he's interested in fighting, isn't he? And he's interested in being part of the army. But do you think he's interested in power? Because that's what his mum wants him to get.
I don't know. I don't know that he's ever thought about. I don't know that one of Marcus's great flaws is the incapacity for self-reflection.
Yeah.
He doesn't think, doesn't stop to think.
Yeah, I think that's
He
very
doesn't stop
true.
about consequence. He doesn't stop to think about the consequence of his words, really, or his actions. He simply acts, and that is what gives him his power, because he acts without fear.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I am still sadly buffering. Where are we at?
we are under a shower.
Aha. So, this for me, I think I'm going to say something that's a bit pretentious, but it's kind of a soliloquy for his physical presence and for his body in a play that's poetically obsessed with his body. So everybody wants a piece of him, either as this amazing soldier or because his mother wants him to bear these scars, as does her friend, so he can become politically powerful. And I was always very moved by the idea that you would get to see the cost of that and the pain of that and what it's like to have actually obtained all of these wounds, have to receive this honor and this adulation that you don't want from the other soldiers and take it on, and
Yeah.
then to give him a moment alone when you see that.
I think somewhere in the play there's a discomfort with the idealization, which is expressed in that previous scene, where they are fating him and they're chanting his name, and he says, "I pray you no more." I have done as you have done, that's what I can.
Yeah.
Induced as you have been, that's for my country. He's trying to say, all I've done is what I said I would do. I don't need anything. That there's some pleasure for him or some fulfillment in the act of doing, not in the reward or consequence of doing.
Yeah.
Which I think is perhaps a very physical thing.
Yeah, I think he lives in the physical, doesn't he? What is it Menendez says? His heart's his mouth.
His heart's his mouth, what his breast forges, that his tongue must vent. And what I understand is that I think that he's been brought up to be honest and to be true to himself, true to his nature, by his mother. And now he's entering a phase in his life where, in order to please the people whose approval he needs, he has to be false to his nature. He has to say things he doesn't believe. And
yeah, it's a great bit of score by Michael Bruce just there, actually, from the same place as you, where we go back into City of Rome. And there's just something brilliant about it because you can feel his fate building. It's a brilliant score in that sense. It's just this piece of music that goes, what's coming up is really the body of the play after this victory. This is the act, as it might be in a lot of tragedies. This thing that seems great, this second Coriolanus, this is the thing that's going to propel him into his trajectory where he becomes this tragic figure. I would say hero, but
hero, a tragic figure, an anti-hero, a man who is brought down by his weaknesses, which are connected to his strengths. It's a peculiar it's a very interesting presentation of a man who has such who initially is presented as having such physical courage, such selfless bravery, which is curdled into arrogance, pride, contempt, entitlement, superiority, and is somehow that somehow becomes insoluble. That the gravity of whatever that center is, which is where his strength and his arrogance comes from, is somehow becomes something that is hard, that is impossible to reach or touch or soften, and he becomes more and more obstinate, more and more inflexible, and more self-possessed as the play goes on, in a way that's very troubling and very dangerous.
There's a scene happening now with Menenius and the two tribunes, and the subtlety with which these actors reflected the political tension between these classes.
Yes.
I just thought was so wonderful. These scenes were a real joy to explore with these three actors, because they're all, in their own very specific way, extremely witty and understand and love playing politics in a brilliant way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember
there's your mother thrilled.
We shared a very, anyone who's been backstage at the Donmar may know this, or those who haven't. There are only 2 dressing rooms, and they're quite small, and it fosters this amazing atmosphere between the actors, because there's no sense of separation. Everybody gets ready together. Nobody has a huge amount.
There's no star dressing room or
no one has a huge amount of personal space.
They're infested with mice. I mean, we try and deal with that on a regular basis, but you're in the centre of a Covent Garden, so it's not glamorous, definitely.
But we all talked about it. Everybody I was in the dressing room with, and Mark and Elliot in this scene. We used to talk about every night we would all discover some new seam of political discourse about the play, that its complexity about how a society is ably governed, and that Shakespeare presents so many different sides of the argument, and Menenius, which I think is a truly great part, which Mark Gatiss is playing, is somebody who has dedicated his life to political service. I think has a genuine love for the city and for the people of Rome, but also has a perhaps familiar mercurial quality of changing the rhetoric or changing the tune in order to suit the mood of the time, which I think.
Yeah. Here is Peter de Jersey doing an amazing speech in Coriolanus's Caius Marcius's praise. I think there's something very touching about your relationship between you and your general. I was always very moved by what you and Pete found there, I think.
Yes. He's been, every time he's feted, every time Marcius is publicly celebrated, it causes him a kind of pain. He's no more of this, it does offend my heart. Is that modesty? Is that false modesty? Is that a performative modesty? Or does it genuinely offend his heart? Does he not want? Is he resistant?
I was just asking who we're speaking about. So you're speaking about Caius Marcius at the moment, but I was talking about Peter de Jersey's character, Cominius, who's your general, who just spoke a short speech in your praise at the top of this scene, and will go on speak a much longer one. Sorry, Tom.
No, I'm just thinking about this idea of what always fascinated me in the playing of it every night was his natural desire for achievement and specifically for military conflict. And then in the aftermath, distancing himself from being celebrated for that achievement. And how peculiar that seemed to this particular character.
I think one thing she do brilliantly here is play a growing discomfort with what you know is coming. So you know that you're going to be asked to be consul. That's your mother's plan. That's Menenius's plan. And what you did, a bit like a kind of someone playing a really good poker player, is peppered throughout that performance, and people just saw that at these little sort of tells, these little twitches of discomfort. And what sits underneath them is the idea that you're going to now have to do something you don't want to do. You'd much rather go back and probably attack Coriolanus again,
yes,
than have to go into the Senate and be this politician. One of the things that